Hello and a very warm welcome viewers. You're watching Discussion Today with your host Kriti Mishra. World Toilet Day is observed on 19th of November globally to raise awareness about making safe sanitization accessible to all. The theme of this year's World Toilet Day was Sustainable Sanitization and Climate Change. On the occasion, Prime Minister Modi said, and I quote, "India has strengthened its resolve to toilet for all. The last few years have seen an unparalleled achievement of providing hygienic toilets to crores of Indians. It has brought tremendous health benefits along with dignity, especially to our women." Unquote. On October 2nd, 2019, all the villages in the states and UTs of India were declared open defecation-free. And for analysing the current status of sanitization in India and the road ahead, I'm joined by Mr. U.P. Singh. He's Secretary, Department of Drinking Water and Sanitation, Ministry of Jal Shakti, and Mr. Akshay Rout, former Director General, Special Projects, Swachh Bharat Mission. Welcome to Rout Television, both of you.
Thank you.
Mr. Singh, let me come to you first. Swachh Bharat Mission, or Abhiyan, launched by Prime Minister Narendra Modi in 2014, world's largest toilet building exercise or behavioral change initiative. As the world celebrated World Toilet Day, how do you view the success of Swachh Bharat Abhiyan?
When Honorable Prime Minister, way back in 2014, on 15th August, when he announced about open defecation-free India from the ramparts of Red Fort, a lot of people heard this with kind of a disbelief actually. Some people thought that a Prime Minister of the country is talking something like a toilet. On the other hand, a lot of people think that this is not something which is achievable, that in next 5 years, providing a toilet to something like a 60 crores. When this program was launched on 2nd October 2014, every second person in the world who was practicing open defecation was in India actually. And it was not only just a construction of latrine actually, as you very rightly have right now said, that is also required a lot of behavioral change actually. And then rest is the history. What happened next from 2nd October 2014 to 2nd October 2019, everybody knows that not only we built something like more than 10 crores toilet benefiting something like 60 crore population of India. There was a massive behavioral change actually, and all the subsequent surveys shows that the utilization of toilets have been very good, because in India a lot of times we think that something is built actually, but it is not being utilized. So we not only paid for construction, we paid for the performance, and its benefits are known to everyone. As you rightly say, it's not only a economic benefit, but in terms of not only health benefits, but in terms of dignity, especially to the women. Because I remember I come from a small village in Bihar, and in my childhood, when a lady used to get married and he comes to her sasural, she would not have 2 square meals because she didn't know where will she required to go when she had to go during the daytime actually. So it brought economic benefit, it brought health benefit, it brought a lot of dignity to the women, and everybody today knows that perhaps not many of these kind of programs have seen the kind of success which Swachh Bharat Mission has seen in India.
Well, absolutely, sir. Dignity is a very important term that you used. Mr. Rout, you've handled special projects in Swachh Bharat Mission. Now, there was Swachh Bharat Mission Urban and Swachh Bharat Mission Gramin. How has Swachh Bharat Abhiyan transformed the rural India specifically?
It has transformed beyond recognition, I must say. The Secretary was giving some details now. I'll just make one point. Today, the country is struggling to come out of COVID pandemic. And I, for one, I shudder to think, if we did not have this 10 or 11 crore toilets made in the last 6 years, what would have happened to the lockdown? People would have gone out and for defecation in the open, because that's the only way life was. As Secretary pointed out, it was 600 million open defecators in India. So they would have gone out. And what would have happened to all these, the principles of not being exposed outside and avoiding the virus and all that? Just imagine. So this is one point of example. And we have talked about women's dignity, security. We are also talking about the huge connection with health, nutrition. More importantly, I think it is also, today we're talking on World Toilet Day. It's also a question of rights, the rights of the women, the rights of children, and that is why India has set an example now under the leadership of Honorable Prime Minister. As Upendraji said, when no one was talking, the political will was available in India 2014 to go and up there in the ramparts of the Red Fort to announce that India must be open defecation free. But today, 42 crore people in the world are still not having access to safe sanitation. And about 30 crore don't have access to hand washing, which is one of the 3 key principles to adhere to avoid COVID pandemic. So we are talking about mask, we are talking about social distancing, and we are talking about hand washing. Hand washing is an integral part of sanitation movement, which is yet to pick up. And a lot of the world, including children in the school, are deprived of that. So now coming back to Swachh Bharat, there are 4 things which worked. I'm sure that we all have a sense of history. In fact, the Ministry of Jal Shakti is trying to take it forward. 4 things which were unique in India: the political will, the public finance, the partnership, and the people's participation. We had the political will. In India, the model is called PM, CM, DM, and VM. Prime Minister, Chief Minister, the district collector, and the village mukhya.
Yes.
All these 4, when they become your champions, things move easily. Then we put money where our mouth was. About more than 1 lakh crores have been put in I don't think any country has put so much money in encouraging sanitation to go forward. Then we had it as everyone's business. It is not only Ministry, Department of Drinking Water and Sanitation, which was at that time, but all the ministries, all the departments equally contributed, civil society, media, corporates. So it became everyone's business. That is what partnership was all about. Then, of course, led by the Honorable Prime Minister, it became a mass movement, a Jan Andolan. Perhaps no other program has resonated in the villages and towns of this country more than Swachh Bharat. Every child to elderly person knows the name of Swachh Bharat. And that is also one of the magic reasons why we have the difference that we are seeing today.
Well, absolutely. So this was backed by political will and became a mass movement, a people's movement. But Mr. Singh, Mr. Rout was talking about the COVID-19 pandemic. Now we understand that sanitization, hygiene, clean water, they're absolutely essential and could save millions of lives every year. And this gains paramount importance during the COVID pandemic. How do we strengthen our fight?
See, right now what we have been talking about, basically we have been talking about Swachh Bharat mission, and we have been talking basically of the open defecation free. But I must tell you that this is one kind of a goal which has been achieved, but we have to achieve another goal. ODF by itself does not lead to total sanitation actually. So what we have done is we have not sitting on the laurels of SBM. From this year we have started SBM 2, what we call. Now SBM 2 has, I would say, 2 major things. The one is sustainability. Like once we have achieved ODF status does not mean that it will remain so forever if we do not do anything else. So we have to sustain that ODF plus. Plus the other thing which is very important for total sanitation is basically solid and liquid waste management in the villages actually. So now SBM 2, and again all the kind of elements of SBM is present in SBM 2.0 also or SBM 2 also. This also is backed out by almost 1,48,000 crore for solid and liquid waste management, for sustainability. So that journey continues actually. But then another very important aspect is that if you really want to use toilet properly, what you require is water actually. Not only for hand washing, for everything you require water. Now, equally big, I would say a bigger program called Jal Jeevan Mission, as you are aware today. Jal Jeevan Mission has a financial outlay of 3,60,000 crore actually. And the target is even little bigger, in the sense that that time we had about 10 crore household where the construction of toilets was to be done. Here out of 19 crore, approximately 19 crore households which we have in the rural area, only 3.27 crore, 3.23 crore rather, household have a tap water connection when this program has been launched or was announced last year again by the Honorable Prime Minister from the ramparts of Red Fort. That means nearly 16 crore households have to be provided with a tap water, and here is not just the connection. What is more important is basically the reliability or regularity which with water is to be supplied, the quantity and the quality actually. And in this already we have done about 2 crore 60 lakhs in the meantime. In last 15 months or so we have gone to a level of about 5.85 crore already. So about 30% of the population in the country is already provided today with the tap connection through which clean drinking water is being made available actually. But there is another thing which is very important is that we have also launched a 100 days campaign. This 100 days campaign is basically providing clean tap water to every school and every Anganwadi center. And that's very important in the time, especially in the time of COVID, where the need for not only hygiene, but need of a regular washing, and especially if the children which are more vulnerable is required. So I think both these initiatives, SBM2 as well as Jal Jeevan Mission, would go a long way, not only to ameliorate the situation arising out of COVID, but it would provide a real total sanitation as far as our rural area is concerned.
So you made a very important point about water. Mr. Rout, now there are two aspects related to water. One is to lessen the requirement of water, and second, to reduce water contamination. How do we address this twin challenge?
I think Secretary was spot on when he mentioned about the importance of water to sustain sanitation. And when we call, there is a word called WASH, water, sanitation and hygiene. You have to see all this together. They are an important troika which is interrelated, and one is not complete without the other. And he also mentioned the example of the 100-day campaign to give water to schools. In fact, I am to some extent associated with the COVID response in school reopening. In fact, one of the major concerns is if the WASH infrastructure and practices are okay in the schools or not. And this is great that there is a 100-day campaign for this. And because WASH infrastructure which was created, particularly the toilets, in the early days of Swachh Bharat mission, under the Swachh Vidyalaya program, toilets, segregated toilets, boys and girls, were created in most of the schools. It was almost universal. But it's important to check, as Secretary was mentioning, if these are functioning, if the toilets are functional, if the water is available. And you added clean and potable water, because that is equally important to make the toilets function and also to make the hand washing facilities available and also for drinking of the children safely in the school. If these are happening, then the school reopening, which has become a national issue, which is now important when the children are going to come back after 8 months. So that is all this infrastructure that the Secretary was mentioning, and I am trying also to explain. These are required in a school situation and other institutions as well, like Anganwadi and other places. So that's one. And I will just comment a little bit on the sustainability thing that also Mr. Singh mentioned. That's so important. Actually, he's himself driving, he and his colleagues are driving the SBM2. But the sustainability, because the whole thing, as you rightly said yourself, begins with behavior change. It's not only the toilets, but the behavior. And behavior, the scientists would say, is not a one-night affair. There have been substantial work in 6 years, but we have miles to go. It has to be cemented. And in this country, on important things like literacy, for example, and there are other examples, missions, there is a relapse. The dangerous word is relapse. If behavior is not continuously cemented, then it can relapse. So I'm sure that the ministry and the department and others, the community at large, are working on making sure that the behavior which has been created assiduously by building champions, by building community-led total sanitation training, and so many other instruments involving panchayats, nagarpalikas, this is not wasted. In the coming days, when SBM2 is happening, when solid liquid waste management, grey water management, fecal sludge management, plastic abandoning, all these are going on. At the same time, the valuable asset of the sanitation, that is the toilets, I'm sure the functionality and the usage will be retained by the efforts of one and all.
Well, absolutely, sir. And as we're talking about sustainable efforts, Mr. Singh, Sustainable Development Goal 6 is all about clean water, hygiene, sanitation. How do you view India's contribution in achieving SDG 6?
I would say that we are much ahead of what the target has been set for the world actually. Target for the world was that we achieve all these by 2030 actually. We have already achieved as far as the ODF status is concerned. And right now, even the Jal Jeevan Mission, I'm sure that it would get completed by 2024. So we would be achieving the SDG goal well before its target date actually, which is fixed for the world. But here you were mentioning something which is very important actually, in the sense that sometimes easy availability of water also leads to its wastage actually. So we are also concerned about in Jal Jeevan Mission, there are quite a few, it's not just providing an infrastructure and it's not providing a tap connection from which water will come. One is that minimum quantity, we have said that 55 liters per person per day, water would be available. It would have to be our BIS standards. And it has to be regularly supplied. It's not that I get the supply today and I don't get supply tomorrow. But then there are a few things which are very important. One is that this is kind of a community-led implementation. Again, like Swachh Bharat mission, the Jal Jeevan mission is also community-led. But what two other things which are very important is that source sustainability. Because most of these water will come either from a groundwater source or a surface water source. In India, in rural areas, almost 85% of drinking water need is met from the groundwater actually. So one is that how do we ensure that, because everywhere you find today a report that groundwater tables are going down actually. So we are working simultaneously of groundwater recharge. In fact, when we have taken this 100 days campaign for the schools to have a piped water connection, we have also said that let all those schools also have a rooftop rainwater harvesting actually. So one is that water conservation, the water recharge of groundwater is a very important component in this Jal Jeevan mission. And we have got fortunately a good deal of funds apart from a budget provision from a 15th Finance Commission, as much as 30,375 crore this year is available. 50% of that has already gone to PRIs for sanitation and water actually. So on anything, it's not only the distribution, but on sustainability of source and the other things we are also working on liquid waste management. Because more water would mean perhaps more grey water generation in the villages. So how some basic treatment is done, not a very costly kind of treatment, but maybe a appropriate technology, something like a waste isolation pond or something like a constructed wetland, and that is done. So these two are also very important part. Source sustainability, so that a situation should not come where we have a tap but we don't have water coming out of the tap. A lot of people fear that. So we are also working on that. And we are also working on grey water management, which will be a bit of a problem in rural areas, which was not hitherto, because now we will have a better availability of water in rural areas.
Well, absolutely, sir. You talked about...
Yeah.
Yes, sir. Go ahead, sir.
Kirti, I'll take you for a minute to the anxiety that you expressed about the meeting of SDG 6.2. And Mr. Singh mentioned about the Indian part of it, how India has met its responsibility more than handsomely. That's absolutely true. But for me, if I look at the world and 42 crores are still missing out on safe sanitation, I think the world will struggle to achieve this target within time by 2030 if every country, those who are affected, like countries in Africa, quite a bit in Southeast Asia, lot in Africa actually, if they don't show the same amount of urgency which India has shown. India did one beautiful thing managerially and also politically. They put a sunset clause. The Prime Minister put October 19 as the clause. So everyone had to, instead of drip, 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 people had to move like a Concorde jet. Okay, it has its own debate whether we should do it so fast or not. That is another debate. But the fact is that we could, because the target was set, everyone, whether it is a political representatives or the bureaucrats, the people in the field, everyone was working in that direction. So I'm not seeing the same sense of urgency and money allocation. Now, Mr. Singh talked about the good amount of money that is for Jal Jeevan Mission. There was equally good amount of money for Swachh Bharat. I am not seeing other countries allocating that much of money. Unless that urgency, champion building and money and partnerships are there in other countries, we are going to have a tough time. And if water and sanitation targets under 6.2 are not met, we are waiting for some type of disaster because the ripple consequences of it are not being seen by some people.
Well, absolutely, sir. That's a very important point you're making. And also, Mr. Singh talked about waste management. And I remember that World Economic Forum said that India's urban centers, they produce around 120,000 tons of fecal sludge every day. So certainly we need novel methods to deploy and in order to ensure that there is waste management is taken care of. But shifting focus to climate change now. Mr. Singh, this year's World Toilet Day, the theme for this year's World Toilet Day was sustainable sanitation and climate change. It calls for resilient sanitation systems. Explain the link between sanitation and climate change and access to toilets.
Actually, as I told you earlier, real sanitation or good use of toilet, for that what is important is the availability of water actually. And what one can see today, the impact of climate change on one parameter, which is the rainfall actually. As you know, in India, we have a rainfall which is fairly good. In a way, almost more than 1,000 millimeter rainfall is there. Now, but then its distribution over time and space is very skewed actually. You know, most of our rainfall is confined to a 3-4 monsoon months. And the other is that very spatial distribution. You may have areas, we have areas in Northeast where we get 3,000, 4,000 millimeter rainfall. We have an area, let's say in part of Rajasthan or Gujarat or even Vidarbha, Marathwada, where we may be getting only a 300, 400 millimeter rainfall. So this was there. I'm not saying this skewed distribution was there. But what has happened over the last few years, that this pattern is becoming more and more skewed. Total rainfall is not changing, but because of change in climate change, what is happening is that a number of rainy days are coming down. Earlier, suppose there used to be total, those 3 months or 4 months, we used to have, let's say 50 or 60 rainy days, that has now come down to 30 or 40 rainy days. So that means number of rainy days would be less. That means in same day, a 400 millimeter rainfall would not be distributed over 30 days. A 400 millimeter rainfall would come in 2 days actually. And the consequences would be that more extreme events, whether it's a flood and whether the droughts will increase actually. So our challenge, in my opinion, is that how do we manage with this? And for that, a water management will have to be much better actually. And in my opinion, if we can manage that water well, we would be able to manage our sanitation well also. So I basically, yeah.
So what are the kind of technologies that your ministry is promoting for this?
No, see, technology for what? If you are talking in terms of basically, as far as the water conservation is concerned, I would not right now talk so much of technologies actually. I would talk of some basic things. For example, when we talk of, I these days talk of 5 R's of water actually. Reduce, recycle, reuse of water, recharge of water, and respect for water. See, there was a time when India used to respect water a lot actually. Somewhere maybe since the easier availability of water has led to a situation where we do not respect water so much. I'll give you simple examples actually. Let's forget about technology for the time being. We used to have very large number of water bodies in this country. Be it urban areas, be it rural areas, even Delhi people say that we used to have more than 1,000 kind of water bodies actually. Now, what has happened that over a period of time, these water bodies also either have been encroached upon, they have got silted up, the channel which used to take the water to that water body is again encroached. As a result, today what is happening is that we have the urban floods which you hear. For example, last year you heard a Patna urban flood. That was not caused by basically a river overflowing actually. That is because the water falling inside the city, one is the climate change, but the other is that water has no way to go. It can't go down because we have cemented, we have plastered everywhere. It can't go to water bodies because we destroyed our water bodies actually. So I would say that there's a lot of scope if simply if we can rejuvenate all our water bodies in the country, be it wells, be it tanks, be it ponds, be it whatever, be it lakes, be it wetlands or whatever. So that would be some way that we would be able to kind of store the water which will fall. Idea is catch the rain where it falls, when it falls.
Well, absolutely, sir. That's a very important point that you're making. And of course, India became open defecation-free, a milestone that we achieved because of such a Swachh Bharat Abhiyan. But sanitation is a continuous process and focus of ours also has to be undivided. On that note, thank you so much for joining us on this discussion. So that's all we had for you in this edition of Discussion today. Thanks for watching and stay tuned to Rajya Sabha Television.